Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another of our irrigation training series by Jane Irrigation. I'm Richard Bastucia, Vice President of Water Management Solutions, and we have a great program for you today. We're joined this week by Frank Toves from Irrigation Design and Construction, and he's going to be talking about setting up a successful fertigation process for indoor growing. More and more as all growers, and especially indoor, look for ways to automate and reduce cost. Automation and fertigation seems to be one of the first places they're going to. So we're really fortunate to have Frank join us today. And I'll tell you why. Frank's been in this business for, 15 years already. But one thing he's really done is he's built up a really solid solid reputation as the go-to guy for indoor growers right now in the whole Central Valley and Central Coast. So we're really fortunate to have him here to talk to us. And especially, man, this guy is working hard. He's a new dad again, and he definitely has a lot going on. So Frank, thanks very much for joining us today. Where are you joining from?
So I'm sitting in my office out of our IDC's Castroville branch here on the coast, about 30 minutes north of Monterey, 30 minutes south of Santa Cruz. So we're right in the middle, right in the bay. That's where I'm at.
So this is kind of near where you live and you work out of, right?
Yeah, I'm based out of this office, but I manage a branch down in Santa Maria, and then as well as our operations that we're working on in the desert and the Southwest.
Wow.
Valley, Imperial, yeah.
Yeah, so you really do cover a broad area for IDC. So let's see, I heard a lot of Central Coast, some desert. Maybe you could give us some more specifics on exactly where?
So everywhere, myself, we go as far north, helping our other locations that we have up in Dixon, Stockton, Patterson, Los Palos. And then me specifically, we have a salesperson based out of Brawley and Santa Maria here in Castroville as well, that we go down to LA, the Yuma area, working on everything from traditional farming to indoor growing, greenhouse grows, you name it, we're doing it.
Wow, that's a lot of windshield time, I think, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
A lot of good planning and the travel time too, I'm sure. So, Frank, you like I said, you've been involved in irrigation and this part of the country for quite a while now. What are some of the major shifts you're seeing right now in the past few years?
What we've seen, prior even to the cannabis boom, was a lot of fresh berry growers moving into alternative forms of growing, meaning outdoor hydroponic, in pots, substrate growing as they called it, and then now with the cannabis boom, a lot of the old nurseries that were run down in a lot of these areas, Monterey County, Carpinteria, we saw a lot of revamp in those facilities. The indoor growing became huge with the cannabis market, but then just now with the fresh leafy greens, we're seeing more and more people transition to try to either go greenhouse or indoor to supply a more controlled crop to their customer base.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember seeing you a few years ago at Western Growers. Yep. And there were several educational sessions that happened at Western Growers, and we were attending some of those. And, the rooms might be half full, three-quarters full. But when the cannabis session started a few years ago, there was standing room only, wall-to-wall people out in the hall listening. And you could see the boom happening then. Are we still experiencing that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a telltale sign that at Western Growers, we have some of the biggest growers in the United States there, right? And they're looking at the cannabis market not only for what they're doing on the indoor growing, but how they're handling the regulations, being as they're regulated more than any other crop that's out there, and what they're doing personnel-wise, how they're managing facilities, how they're managing tracking. So a lot of those guys were there specifically to see, not necessarily to grow cannabis, but how do they transition their crops into a more controlled grow environment. like a greenhouse or an indoor grow.
Yeah. So you're seeing that a lot today, right? What other crops besides cannabis are moving indoors?
Specifically, we have obviously there's some large facilities already established in California that grow all the fresh hothouse tomatoes, bell peppers. There are some leafy green growers out there. So what we're seeing more so with those indoor type facilities, or they're targeting a local market, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego. So you have a grow that will specifically supply a certain area of supermarkets, for example. And we're seeing more and more of those local, sustainably grown companies pop up here and there.
Right. So Frank, help us out here too. For those of us who don't know what fertigation is, what exactly is fertigation?
Basically, to put it simply, is we're adding through your irrigation process, whether it's drip, flood, ebb and flow, whatever you're doing, we're adding nutrients to that, whether it's proportional based, EC or pH controlled, and doing that as a spoon feeding through your whole irrigation cycle, or your sets, as a lot of us know them as.
And has everybody automated this, or are some people still resistant?
Oh, here on the coast, our strawberry guys, they still, they have a manual valve, that they have a Honda pump that just pumps the fertilizer in, right? So there has been some resistance to this. The technological move for agriculture seems to be slower than mostly any other market that I've seen. But there is a trend now that we're seeing for fertigation, especially, and automation, that the growers are starting to make a change.
Yeah. So what's so attractive about this that's causing them to make the change?
I would say the number one reason we had initially was, say, methyl bromide, right? The use of fumigants in fresh strawberries was going away. The availability of it.
Yeah.
So the land prep, the fumigation costs, all that were driving growers towards substrate growing. So hydroponic, in a pot with some type of substrate material. And now more so than ever with labor, not just the availability of labor, but the cost of labor, with our hours changing from 10 now to 9 and going to be eventually 8 for the overtime. We're affected by that. The growers are going to be affected by that. So we need to find a way to be more efficient with the labor that we have available to us, and how we're using it, right?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, right? So technology is really solving some people issues here, and that's really great to see. And it just seems like, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, but it just seems like labor being a problem is here to stay for a while.
No, definitely. I mean, the areas that we cover, we're seeing it the most. I mean, California is a heavy ag market, and especially with the current climate, with everything going on, the labor has been a real big issue, and it's getting even worse, right? And labor, some of the. Whoa.
You're still there.
I'm still there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we got you.
I don't see you, but
yeah.
So yeah, the whole climate right now, labor is, I don't see going to change, and it's definitely not going to get any easier.
Yeah. So is this for people breaking into fertigation? Is this tough for them technically to figure out? Is there a bunch of different technologies? What are the requirements here for them to do this?
Most growers are doing fertigation of some aspect already. Like we mentioned, just a basic, hey, here's my mix that I got from whoever did the recommendation, PCA, the CCA, the fertilizer company, and they're adding nutrients to their irrigation program now, right? So the next step is for us is where do you want to go? Do we fully automate that system? Do we use something like a dosatron, which is really reliable, a hydraulic type dosing that will get you to the next level? Or do we go fully automated with a complete either Venturi based or some type of pump based injection system, right? Where we're monitoring and controlling and injecting exactly what we want to the plant.
Yeah. So there's probably still some people that are still mixing by hand and hand watering. Is that right?
Definitely. I mean, uh, definitely in the traditional ag space, but on the indoor growing side as well, there's a trend of I want to mix my own nutrients, water my own plants. You know, the I touch this plant, it's going to be the best for that plant. But as you scale, obviously that doesn't make sense labor-wise. You get back to that issue. So definitely a lot of guys still doing that, and you know that's why we've been successful, because we're able to help them transition to that next level of thing you get to.
Yeah, and I always think about all the things I have to think about every day, and I think about hand watering and fertilizing that way. And I'm not so sure I give everyone a dose, and I'm not sure I
Yeah.
don't double dose some. Right? I have other things to think about while I'm doing this, so I see that as a big downside. Right?
No, definitely, especially if it's not you. Say you're the grower yourself, right? There's no way that you're going to be able to water every plant you have by hand, make the mix yourself. You got to rely on someone else to do that in most cases. And, you know, if we can help you get there by automating that process with the data and be more precise, then definitely makes sense.
Yeah, so we were talking a little earlier, Frank. You and I were just chatting, and you were saying, you know, there's several different types of fertigation systems. So, and I know you've got some photos for us. I don't know if our video came back for you or not, but
Yeah.
certainly, I think you have some photos of some systems that maybe we could take a look at, and you could kind of take us through what a typical fertigation system looks like.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get it to work here.
Yeah, so we can definitely see your screen now. Yeah, that looks great. Thank you.
Yeah. So here, what we're looking at is on the right, we have a panel. It's one of the control panels from a company called Priva that we as IDC are a dealer of, that we use and recommend. And on the left is a valve manifold going out to different zones. So you see in this greenhouse application, we have independent lines that go to different zones that irrigate a specific recipe for that zone.
Yeah, so that looks, if we could go back a slide, I have a couple of questions about that. I mean, this looks really clean. What a great installation. That's beautiful. So in this case, where are the tanks?
Yeah, you can't see them in this photo, but on the picture on the left, this is the end of that manifold. So what we have upstream of that is a fertigation system that's blending and injecting the nutrients. It draws from a clean water storage tank, creates a blend, a mix based on the grower's set points, and then sends it out to that specific room and runs the irrigation as well for that room.
Yeah. So the tanks, are they mostly inside? Can they be outside? Does it matter?
It just depends. I mean, there's applications where the tanks are outside. Say we have stored well water or stored RO water that we're blending. On some of the larger scale facilities, the tanks have to be outside. You know, depending on where you're growing, if you're growing where there's snow or something like that to consider, then, you know, we've seen growers bury tanks or, you know, build structures around them. But in most indoor growing facilities that's in a building or warehouse, something like that, the tanks are typically inside.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. So your next slide there.
So this system, what we see here is on the right are some storage tanks. So what we're doing here is the injection system on the left. What it does is it builds a daystock blend into each one of these tanks on the right. And then from there, we control the irrigation out from that tank. So on low flow applications where we can't do a direct inline injection, we recommend for the precision to have a daystock tank system to make sure we're hitting the correct ratio of fertilizer, of acid, of the EC, and the pH that the growers want to target.
Yeah, so this brings up a host of questions. One, I mean, this looks super sophisticated. I wish this was my place. I love that. But so where do these growers find out what to mix? I know a lot of it's proprietary, and they're not going to necessarily share it. But how do they figure this out? Number one, and then number two, how do they figure out how much to give?
So that's a great question. A lot of the growers we deal with say they come from the outdoor lettuce market, for example. They're used to dealing with a fertilizer company or an in-house grower or PCA or CCA that helps make these recommendations on the mixes that they need for the specific crop that they have. A lot of the cannabis guys have been doing it for so long that they're used to working with specific companies that they get their fertilizer from, whether it's the hydroponic store, or a lot of guys are now moving into more of the large scale traditional ag fertilizer suppliers. So we have the growers lean on those companies to determine what mixes they need, what ratios of injection are important for them, for what they're trying to accomplish. And then what our role is to help them achieve those exact mixes and ratios that go to the plant.
Yeah, so I'm really curious, and this isn't a commercial for IDC, but does IDC, are you guys stocking a lot of these fertilizers now?
The fertilizer itself, we do not know. We strive to focus on what we know best, which is obviously irrigation design and construction, right? So there are companies out there that sell both. I personally believe that if we focus on what we know best, we do really well at it. And we partner with companies and recommend certain companies that do supply those fertilizers that are experts in those fields.
Yeah, so we just got a great question from one of the viewers, and they were asking, how difficult is it to, I mean, this looks like sophisticated technology. How difficult is it to train workers to know how to use it, right? A mistake could be costly.
No, definitely. And I say the learning curve is definitely steep. Your typical irrigator is not going to jump at the sight of seeing something like this at their ranch or in their grow, right? But we do have everybody, multiple array of people running these systems. So definitely the learning curve is steep, but once you get the hang of it, and with our support and our manufacturer partners' support, we definitely can help them learn. The biggest concern that I see is the turnover in employees, where we have a guy running a system for a year. He's grown to a point where then he moves on to another facility, and then the new people coming in don't get the proper training. That's where you see the real issues.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I'm guessing you do hands-on training with this, or do you have other ways to train people?
Yeah, so as IDC, all the salespeople that are involved in the sales of these products go through a training process. We have in-house technicians that specifically work on these types of systems. And then we have only a select few of partners that we deal with, manufacturers, so that we don't have the whole, phone book of companies that we need to learn how to use, right? So we only choose the best and work with the best, and right. We know how to make those systems work.
Yeah, that's great. So if I bought one of these, I would have phone support from you, or you'd come out and support, or phone support from IDC and any tech support potentially too.
Definitely, yeah, and that's one of the biggest things we strive. Whether you use the systems that we provide or any of the other ones that are out in the market, is that you challenge those guys to provide the support, because the last thing you want to do is spend the money to put something that's going to do a great job and give it a bad name because the support not behind it, right? So, there are a lot of other companies out there doing this, but what we strive on is the support behind it.
Yeah, no, that's great, Frank. Now, we've seen a couple different systems. I know you have a few more shots, but I'm wondering, ballpark wise, and I mean, it's my favorite answer to any irrigation question, and that is, it depends, right? And yeah. We get that, but what in general, what are people thinking about spending when they decide to make one of these investments in fertigation?
So, a lot of people will know the system here to the right, which is the dosatron type system, which we use a lot of and we recommend for a lot of growers. So we know that those units can range from $600 to $1,200 per dosatron. And say you have 5 rooms that have 5 each of these, you're looking upwards of $20,000, right? A typical fertigation machine, like the one we see here on the left, that's going to run you between $20,000 and $30,000 just for the unit, right? Now, the companies we work with, they have software charges. There's a lot more install involved. There's a lot more back-end support. So depending on the size of the facility, we've done some that are $50,000 all the way up to $1 million fertigation automation project, right? So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, what level of control you want. Is there climate? Is it just fertigation? So it really just depends, but you can get as in depth as you'd like, definitely.
Do most of these systems end up paying for themselves in a pretty short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, if you simply work off the math of labor costs and the ability of you being able to control these systems remotely, the data that you collect that you have available to you, if anybody ever asks, yeah, I mean, some of these systems pay themselves back in a year, depending on the size. Yeah. It's a no-brainer when you look at it that way. Definitely.
Yeah, this stuff's so cool. I want one. So, Frank, how do I know that the first plant is getting the same amount of fertilizer as the 100th plant down the line?
So that's a simple hydraulic question, right? Where we design systems hydraulically, and in most cases with pressure compensating emitters, say for drip, where the emitter will drip a specific amount based on a pressure range. So what we do, say in the Priva system that we use, is we set a nominal flow for a block, for a zone, or a table, and when we're irrigating, we can tell the deviation of that flow. So we know that there could be plugging, or there can be a leak, or something like that, right? But it really comes down to how you hydraulically design that, the emitter you choose, all the components themselves, right? That goes from your traditional strawberry farm to your cannabis farm.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So then, how do I monitor this? How do I make sure that my plants are getting the right? You just mentioned all the flow and that, but can I test my plants? Is there something else I can do to know?
Definitely. I mean, the sensors that are available in the market that are proven, right? There's a lot of new stuff coming out, but we have soil moisture sensors, there's weighing platforms, there's cameras, you name it, right? You can incorporate all these sensors to help you make decisions. I never recommend anybody to depend on those sensors to grow the crop for you, but there are tools out there that help you do a better job and help you focus on taking care of the plant more so than, hey, is this dripper plugged, right?
Yeah, no, that's interesting and very helpful. So, if I was putting a system in, right, and look, we've all been around irrigation long enough and growing or landscaping to know not everything runs perfectly every time, right? Or there's always some challenges. What somebody doing this for the first time or getting started, what are some of the challenges you suggest they kind of watch for?
Well, it depends. If you're a row crop vegetable grower now and you're looking to build a greenhouse, right? It's not as easy as picking a part of your land that you own and determining, hey, I'm going to build a greenhouse here today, right? There's a lot of regulations, a lot of eyes, especially on the cannabis market, that kind of limit that. So you got to be aware of where you're at, where you're growing. Know that the labor force that you're going to have may not necessarily translate from the field, right? Some of this may be not for everybody, right? So, how the way it's harvested, the way it's picked is different than what you would see in the open field. And then just the technology behind it, it's just different. Like I mentioned before, the employee turnover is huge. With any type of system, you need to make sure that you have somebody on site that knows how to run it, knows how to troubleshoot it, knows who to call when they can't figure it out. Right? As soon as you lose that person, you're in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a new labor problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So always have some backups trained and probably make sure you know it well yourself, right? Not to rely on one person. So,
Definitely.
yeah, the other thing I always think about when I look at these is I think, those pots are pretty small. I imagine there's a good bit of water that flows through the pot and has to get caught somewhere. Do we recycle this water? Do we use it again? Do we just send it to a drain? What are most of the guys doing?
So in the ideal world, you're targeting for a minimal drain amount, right? Say 5 to 10% during normal irrigation. But as salts build up in these pots or in a rock wool block or something like that, you want to flush them out. So that water does need to go somewhere. And in most cases, with indoor growing or greenhouses, a lot of especially in California, the regulations are saying we need to do something with that water, right? So the solutions that we've been working with to reclaim and reuse that water are UV treatment, some type of chemical treatment, some type of ultrafiltration. And then we are able, depending on what pathogens we need to remove from the water, able to reintroduce that into the irrigation, or in some cases, maybe landscape, blend it maybe with some RO brine water or some condensate water off of some equipment and use them in other applications around the facility.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good to see, right? That helps with the water conservation message. I certainly know, at Jane, we manufacture the octobubbler that's used a lot in these indoor grow houses, and it's interesting to me to watch the demand. We sell a 2, 6-gallon, 10-gallon, and 20-gallon, and from time to time you see the shift, right? There's a really high demand for 2-gallon, then all of a sudden the demands for the 20. A few years ago, people were asking me, can I take the stoppers out so I get free flow? It seems to change, and probably changes
Yeah,
with people's desire and maybe regulation too, right?
definitely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the pictures you see here on the left are Jane Click 50 emitters, but we have done a lot of installs with octobubblers. That was one of the emission devices of choice for a lot of, especially the indoor cannabis growers, for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
what we're seeing now, Richard, on the commercial scale is more so of these emitters and stake assemblies. The emitters are proven. We use them in vineyards, so they work really well. So this is one of the leading solutions for drip on an indoor grow.
Yeah, this is a beautiful installation too. I mean, that looks like a laboratory. It's really done well, and yeah, really nice. I don't know who shot that photo, but it's a great one.
Yep.
So, Frank, as we start looking, certainly during this time of COVID, we've seen technology really accelerate in all areas of our life. What do you see out there that's coming that you're kind of interested in or thinking might be new and innovative when it comes to indoor growing and fertigation?
So what we're seeing, and because we have the benefit of working with companies that have been doing these for 30 years plus in the greenhouse market, and understand building automation and how climate affects plants, right? Is that there is going to be a shift to autonomous growing where a lot of growers are going to want to see a very specific crop come out of a facility that's the least amount of hands on it, right? The least amount of human input, right? So, is that the right way to do it? Maybe not necessarily, but just with the way things are going, I think, say, leafy greens where we have a lot of open field issues with E. coli or other types of bacteria, this controlled environment agriculture is definitely going to take hold. And I see more autonomous type growing solutions definitely coming in the near future.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. And we always you always hear, and I always say people who don't work outside all day are the ones who say it. Oh, how nice it is to work outside all day, but every day is not a nice day. But indoors, where you can control your environment for both your plants and people, it's sometimes a lot easier to work in.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah. So Frank, I'm, like I said, I'm really excited about this technology, and I know we've got a few hundred viewers today that are excited about it too. If somebody wants to get started, if they need some help, how do they get a hold of you? What step us through that process and what that might look like.
So I just put up a slide that has my contact information. So you can reach out to either of our websites we have there. It'll direct you to myself or someone within our organization that can help you get started. I think one thing to consider is that, in the traditional ag market, a guy comes to us and says, hey, I have a quote for a project we want to put in for 100 acres of strawberries, right? He goes to 3 different companies, gets quotes, and gets it done. What we see a lot in this indoor greenhouse space is these growers, maybe they're considering it, maybe they're thinking about it, but they're not sure. And, there's a lot of work and effort that goes into building just a quote, let alone a layout for these facilities. So, there's design charges that we have, which is not common. It's a different way of thinking. There's more process involved. So more levels of commitment needed to move forward with something like that, just because of the time involved in doing it, for sure.
So, but you'll work with them, you'll spell it all out, they'll get a good idea before they get into it of what the costs are and their time requirement, right?
No, definitely. Yeah, we like to be honest up front and, make sure everybody understands what it takes to get one of these projects off the ground, and not only financially, but personnel and just time and commitment from the growers and our end to see it through.
Yeah, well, certainly your personal reputation, and then of course the reputation of IDC are really high in the industry, and you guys have earned it. So, and I would say that part of it has been this honesty up front, right? And that's what most of us want, or we all want, but we don't always get. So, thanks to you guys for doing that.
No, definitely. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the growers that keep us here doing what we do. So we need to make sure we focus on them and focus on moving them forward and moving our industry forward.
Yeah. So, hey, just one last question here today, Frank, and that is for anybody who's thinking about moving forward with a project like this, what do you say to them? What's your advice to them as they start thinking about this?
I would lean more towards get started now, because there are companies coming from Holland, from Canada, that have been doing this for years, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing we want to see is, great that they're coming in and doing this the right way, but I'd like to see the local growers, California, Arizona, the people here that have been growing forever in this space, in our area, move into this space as well, and not just fall by the wayside because of the technology, right?
Gosh, Frank, I think that is such good advice. And everywhere you look in technology, it's the people who adapt first that grab the market and build the reputation and the experience are the ones that really thrive. So I really think that's great advice. And listen, I want to really thank you for coming on and sharing this information with us today. It's super valuable information that very few people have. So it was nice and generous of you to do that. I want to thank all of our viewers. You're getting lots of comments right now on the chat, people saying thank you and great job. So, and I, of course, want to say that as well. Thanks to our viewers for tuning in today. And listen, I want to say I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll be back next week. And Frank, maybe in another month or so, you can come back and kind of give us Fertigation 102, or, that 200 level class. Today, the basics were so good, and I feel like everybody's got a good starting point, and I know everybody's anxious to get to the next step too. So thank you, and thanks everybody for joining today.
Thank you.